nice to... All right. I'm very happy to be here. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Mike Arauz. I work at a company called August. This is a brand new company, and I'm proud to share it with you today. We literally just started a couple weeks ago, so we need all the love we can get. So 15 years ago, almost to the day, I took my first improv comedy class. Improvisational comedy, that's where you make up scenes and characters as you go. And I had studied theater for a while before I took this class, and I thought I was going to be awesome at it. I was not. It was one of the scariest experiences I've ever had. And basically it was so scary because I thought that everything I had learned before would make me really good at it. But it turned out all that stuff that I knew from traditional theater was almost exactly the wrong thing to do for improv comedy. And I thought of that, I was reminded of that because I feel like more and more these days that's what trying to live and work in the world that we live in today feels like. Where everything that we knew before seems to be the exact wrong thing to do now. So there are two things that I'd like you to take away from this today. One is to kind of appreciate and understand the pace and the significance of the change that we're going through right now. And two, I want you to walk away with a few practical principles that you can take and apply in your work, in your organizations, starting today. So we live in a world that is defined by exponential change and inescapable uncertainty. Exponential change and inescapable uncertainty. And to give you a sense of what exponential really is like, because the human mind isn't really wired to fully grasp what exponential growth looks like. And there's a great anecdote that I got from the book, The Second Machine Age. And it goes like this. It's about in ancient India, when a farmer, a humble farmer, invented the game of chess. And the king at the time loved this game so much, and he wanted to thank the farmer for inventing this fantastic game. And he said, "Tell me what I can give you, I'll give you anything you want to thank you for creating this game." And the humble farmer, being so humble, said, "I'll tell you what we'll do, you can just pay me in grains of rice, and what we'll do to figure out how many grains of rice, we'll put 1 grain of rice on the first square of the chessboard, 2 grains of rice on the second, 4 grains of rice on the next, 8 grains of rice on the next square, and so on, doubling exponentially." And the thing is, the numbers get really big really fast. But even by the middle of the chessboard, the numbers are very, very big, but they're still comprehensible. But by the time you get to the last square on the chessboard, the numbers are completely unfathomable. 18 quintillion grains of rice. By the end of the chessboard, the king is promising the inventor of this game over 18 quintillion grains of rice. And don't worry if you have no context for how many grains of rice that is. Suffice to say, it is more grains of rice than have ever existed in the history of humankind, altogether. So it's a lot of rice. That's what exponential growth looks like, and that's the kind of growth and change that we're seeing right now. And when you think about it in technology, here are a few examples of what exponential growth in technology looks like. A 3D printer that used to cost $40,000, you can now get for just $100, just 7 years later. Sensors that used to cost $20,000, now you can get for just $79. 250-time improvement in just 5 years. And DNA sequencing that used to cost over $10 million now costs just $1,000. 10,000x in 7 years. And that's not it, right? It's also drone technology, solar power technology, neural imaging technology, and others. And there are companies that are taking advantage of this. It used to take the average company on the Fortune 500 company 20 years to reach $1 billion in their market values. And Google, it took just 8 years, Facebook 5 years, Uber and WhatsApp took just 2 years, Snapchat just 22 months, and Oculus Rift got to a $1 billion valuation just 14 months after founding. So that's what exponential change looks like. So it's never been easier to bring an idea to life or to bring a product to scale. On the left here is the Pebble watch. Just this year when they introduced their version 2, they raised over $20 million in pre-sales through Kickstarter in less than a month. Over $20 million, and that's pre-sales. It's not investors who own a piece of their company. People who are pre-ordering the product. And it's never been easier to bring a product to scale. It took the phone system, the phone network, over 89 years to connect 150 million users. But it took Facebook just 8 years to connect 1 billion users. And the Android operating system got to 1 billion users in just 5 years. And just last month, Facebook announced that they had gotten 1 billion users on the same day for the first time ever. Incredible, incredible pace. And a great example of a company that's bringing a lot of these pieces together is Airbnb. Airbnb now has more listings, more places for people to stay than any hotel company in the world. And they have 100 times more listings, more places per employee than the average hotel does. And they also don't own any real estate. Incredibly disruptive business model for the hotel industry. And of course, they're not done growing yet. So everything's amazing, right? Well, as the comedian Louis C.K. Said, everything is amazing and nobody's happy. Because when you look outside, we see all these wonderful things and all this new cool innovation and change happening. That's not actually how it feels for most people inside most organizations. It feels very different for most people. And here are a few of the metrics that are behind how it feels inside most organizations. On the one hand, we've never been more productive, and yet at the same time, it's never been harder to get a return on your investment. And this is the first time in history that these two metrics have diverged. They used to always go in the same direction, and then right around the beginning of the digital age, they started to go in different directions. It's never been harder to stick around or to stay in business as a large corporation. Back in 1958, if you made it onto the S&P 500, it was safe to say that you probably stayed there for 61 years on average. And today you're lucky if you stay there for just 15 years, and that number keeps going down. And lastly, people don't like work. This is a Gallup study, a global Gallup study. Only 13% of people are actually engaged at work. Most people are either not engaged or actively disengaged. I hope that the numbers are a little bit higher among people in this room, but that's a scary statistic. You know, if you're the leader of some big global corporation, the idea that many of your employees don't give a shit about what's going on in your business, that should be pretty scary. So why is this? Well, I contend that the reason is because all of the work that everybody does lives somewhere along this spectrum, from the most certain work to the most uncertain work. The certain work is the stuff that is most known, it's most routine. Think about like assembly line workers, or people who work at a call center, or even things like accounting, or even some legal work, for instance. In the middle, you have things that are kind of complicated, require a lot of coordination. Some of the things are known, but they require a lot of coordination with a lot of people. And that could be running an entire hospital, for example, or even running Amazon.com and managing all the huge network of suppliers and delivery people and everything that they have to run. And then on the other end, the uncertain work, the least known, the most complex work. That could be things like curing cancer, inventing a self-driving car, but it also includes things like figuring out the best new IT system for a mid-sized corporation. There's a lot of uncertainty, even in something like that. And the thing is, computers are really good at this stuff on the left. And artificial intelligence and robotics is steadily eating its way across this spectrum. And that means that the jobs that humans need to be good at are this stuff on the right here. Right? And I would argue that even jobs like, we were talking about this last night, even jobs that currently are being done, like kind of in the freelance economy or the on-demand economy, think of like drivers for Uber, for instance. I would argue that those jobs are just prototypes for jobs that will be done by computers or robots in the not-too-distant future. So the most valuable work for human beings to be doing lives on the other side. And yet the organizations that most people work in are tailor-made, are specifically designed for this world. They're using an operating model that was designed over 100 years ago to optimize certainty, to optimize predictability. And it's exactly the wrong model that you need for work that lives on the other side. There's a great book called Teaming by a woman named Amy Edmondson, who teaches at Harvard Business School. And she talks about this dichotomy, this shift, as the old model being organizing to execute versus the new model, which is organizing to learn. And some examples of what those differences look like. So for instance, when you're thinking about who you want to hire and how you decide who to hire, if you're organizing to execute, you want people who are really good at following the rules. And if you're organizing to learn, you want people who are creative, people who are going to try new things and hopefully not follow the rules. If you're thinking about training, if you're organizing to execute, you have people learn things before you give them a chance to do them. If you're organizing to learn, it's expected that you learn while you're doing it. You learn from doing it. When you think about measuring performance, in the old model, it's about did you do it right? Did you do it correctly? In the new model, it's about did we learn? How much did we learn? How well did we learn? When you think about the org structure, the classic model in organizing to execute, you have all these functional silos, you have all these separated expertise. When you're organizing to learn, however, you need cross-functional teams, integrated expertise. Spotify squad model is a great example, where you have all the disciplines working very closely together and sharing a very discrete mission. And lastly, when you think about process goals, organizing to execute with like Six Sigma and Jack Welch era GE being a classic example. Everything is about driving out variance, making everything perfect and consistent over and over and over again. And when you're organizing to learn, it's exactly the opposite. You want variance, you want deliberate variation so that you can see what works. You can try a lot of different things at once and see what works. So what we've seen in Responsive Org, which is a community that I'm a part of at the company that I used to work at, Undercurrent, we've been studying this shift that's going on. And what we've seen is that there is a nascent revolution bubbling up of a new way of working, the future of work. And some of the companies that are leading this are companies that have been doing it for a little while, actually, without anybody really knowing about it. Companies like Morningstar and Gore, they've been doing it for decades. And some of the new companies are also designing something really revolutionary from scratch, companies that are leading the 21st century. And this new way of working goes by a few names, some of which you've probably heard of. Agile, which is primarily about software development, Lean Startup, the B Team or B Corps, Holacracy, which is a system of self-management, responsive organization, exponential organizations, reinventing organizations, and even the fifth discipline, which is, again, has been around for a while. So it's really, there's a lot of overlap across all of these different approaches and frameworks. And the way that we think about it is that there are 5 kind of essential principles that seem to be common and universal across all of these systems. So number 1, first of 5 principles, be purpose-driven. Organizations that operate in this new way typically put purpose ahead of profit. That doesn't mean that they're not profitable, It just means that they focus on purpose first. Google is a great example. Their purpose is to collect the world's information and make it universally accessible and useful. Khan Academy, which is an online learning site, their stated purpose is a world-class education for anyone, anywhere. And these organizations are very explicitly, deliberately focused on that. Tesla is one of the best examples of all. Elon Musk says over and over again, he keeps telling people, and other people in the energy industry, people in the car industry don't seem to get it because they keep being surprised about the moves that he makes. But their stated purpose is to accelerate the advent of sustainable transportation. That's it. So when they do things like open up their patents so that other people can use their plug-in technology, everyone thinks that that's really weird. Well, it's not really weird if your purpose is to accelerate the advent of sustainable transport. And on top of it, again, it's not purpose instead of profit. It's purpose first. And Tesla has, at the same time as pursuing that purpose, they've also created the safest car ever, the highest rated car ever, and their stock performance is blowing other automakers out of the water. Now, the one other thing that I think is really important, gets more into practical aspects of this, is that you see in these organizations, purpose doesn't just live all the way up here on top. It's replicated throughout every level of the organization. And teams and individuals organize around very specific and well-defined missions. And that's one of the things that's baked into holacracy, and I think makes holacracy work very well. But it's in other systems as well. If a team doesn't have that clarity of mission, and it isn't made explicit so that there's some agreement between that team and the rest of the organization, then they can't be trusted to go and act. So number 2, networks over hierarchies. These kinds of organizations are more connected internally and externally with each other, with a network of peers or freelancers, collaborators. And it's really about, again, one of the things that's baked into holacracy is this idea of role versus soul. The reality in most organizations is that individuals wear many hats. We actually do fill many roles, have many accountabilities and responsibilities across multiple teams. And it's very useful, it's helpful to separate those two so that we can talk about the roles that we need, we can talk about the expectations we have for those roles without necessarily talking about whether or not we want that person on our team. A really interesting example of a project that we did with GE that helped them think about this new mental model for who's part of their organization. So we were doing some work with them on 3D printing and advanced manufacturing. We realized that as more and more hardware engineering becomes digitized, it's going to be easier and easier for people anywhere in their organization, and more importantly, anywhere outside their organization, to contribute and collaborate on hardware engineering challenges. So we wanted to test that and see what it was like. So what we did was we found a website called GrabCAD, which now is a community of over 1 million engineers, all the way from very amateur to very professional, all over the world. And we worked with some internal engineers at GE's aviation business and had them give a particular part to this community. Say, here's the part, it's a bracket that goes inside of a jet engine. And it needs to meet these specific performance specifications. And then we opened it up to see, using 3D printing technology, how would you redesign this part? They got over 600 submissions in less than a month. Again, orders of magnitude more variation than they would normally get using their own internal processes. The winning design had an over 80% weight reduction, which for GE's aviation customers translates to over $20 million in annual fuel savings costs. Because there are thousands of these brackets inside any jet engine. When you take out that kind of weight, it makes a huge difference in the performance. And most importantly, the winner was actually a 20-year-old kid in Indonesia who had never done any kind of aviation engineering before. And so my favorite part of that anecdote actually is there was one of the head engineers at GE Aviation. When we got through the first round and we had all these submissions in, there's this kind of old engineer guy, and he was like, "Oh yeah, I'm not too impressed. I think that I could design a better design." And we were like, "Yeah, sure, go ahead." And so he went away and he came back about a week later, and he had a new, really good design. But the thing was that the design that he came back with was an iteration on all these other designs that had been submitted. He had used everything that he had learned from the community and just done a new iteration on it. He's like, "That's the point. That's why you do this." So networks over hierarchies. Number 3, consent-based self-management. So this is really about empowering employees, and empowering employees very intentionally, very explicitly. At Valve, a gaming company based in Seattle, you have 2 rules when you join the company at Valve. Find something to do, and find more people like yourself to come and work here. That's it. The desks literally have wheels on them so that you can pick them up and move to whatever project or team you feel compelled to work on. So organizations like this are putting more and more power in the hands of individuals and teams at every level of the organization. And one of the things that was really affirming for us when we were doing some research on this is that this kind of empowerment also translates to increased engagement. On Glassdoor, for instance, which is a popular employee rating the employer website, these companies had an average of 4.1 out of 5 rating on Glassdoor, whereas the average is about 3.0. So, and the other thing I want to talk about a little bit is what does consent-based self-management mean, because the 2 things are very important. Self-management is about giving people a way to, giving people permission to do what they think is best and use their best judgment, and to give them a way to make decisions collectively. But the consent-based is also really important because you don't want people to, if people deliberately undermine each other or do things that are counterproductive, you need some way for people to get the input of the other people that their decisions are affecting, yet at the same time get that input in a way that doesn't slow them down or push them towards, in most companies, let's talk to everybody in this room and make sure that whatever we end up doing is okay with everybody. That's consensus-based. And what it ends up doing is that not only does it take too long before we do anything, but what we end up doing is mediocre because it's just the thing that's acceptable to the most people. So consent-based is really about saying, I'm going to get the input to help me make my decision, but it's still my decision to make. And one example of a more traditional company, a banking company based in Canada called Tangerine, that has also embraced this. So they've empowered the people who work in their bank branches in the same way. And the results that they're seeing are they're able to serve twice as many customers per employee, and they have 3 times as many deposits, 3 times as much money in deposit than the average in their industry. So this really does apply to all kinds of different organizations and different kinds of business models. Number 4, responding to change even over following a plan. This one is actually directly from the Agile Manifesto. It's about embracing that experimental mindset. It's also about applying agile thinking, agile approaches to all kinds of work. It doesn't have to be reserved for just software development. Amazon is a fantastic example of this. The way that they develop their product, both their core product and all of the systems underneath it, uses that agile mindset. In fact, they've created something called Amazon Web Labs, which is an internal kind of R&D lab that pushes new experiments directly to the live site every day, every hour. As of the end of 2013, They had run over 2,000 individual experiments in that year alone. One of the experiments that they ran was a test for something where if somebody asked a question about a product, that question would automatically be routed to other customers who had purchased the product and inviting those other customers to answer that question. And in a matter of months, they had millions of questions answered by other customers. And now that's a regular part of their product. And lastly, default to open. And default to open is one of the mantras at Google. The thing is, in a world where we have as much information as we do now, it's impossible to predict which information is going to be most useful to which person. And one of the things that you see over and over again in all of these companies is some kind of shared dashboard with basic key performance metrics of the business, any kind of, the more live data, the better. But any information that might be useful is made accessible to as many employees as possible. One of the things that we're doing at August, which I'm really excited about, is we've actually created a public Google Drive that's accessible from our website, public.aug.co, where we're sharing, our operating agreements, our salaries, our equity, and all of our IP, how we do everything, as much as we can possibly share. We're going to be putting out there. And as we grow and as we get better at this, we're going to make more and more of it available to more people. Another great example of a company that has done some cool stuff around this, Percolate. It's a marketing software company based in New York. And what Percolate did was they created an in-house tool that they call Barista, which automatically captures questions that salespeople are getting when they're out in the field, automatically routes them back to whoever's best suited to answer them, but then also collects all of the questions and answers in an accessible database for everybody. And every week puts out a report that says, here are the new questions that were asked, here are the new answers that were found. So, five guiding principles. Number one, be purpose-driven. Number two, networks over hierarchies. Number three, consent-based self-management. Number four, responding to change over following a plan. Number five, default to open. So if you take anything away today, take any one of these that you feel is most relevant to your organization. I know a lot of you, and certainly those of you at Valsplat, are already doing a lot of this stuff. Hopefully you can push it even further, and hopefully you took it a few new things. If you're interested in learning more about this presentation is in the public folder on our website, as well as a few guides and some more stuff about how to run meetings, how to set up some of this stuff. So thank you very much, and I'd love to take any questions.
Mike, I'm really curious about, for example, you work at GE, so where do you start if you want to change an institution like GE?
Yes.
So you have to probably find somebody who's willing to listen.
Yeah. So GE has over 300,000 employees globally. Yeah. So you know what it's like. I think that the answer, the real answer, and I don't mean this to be flippant, is you start everywhere. Both things are really important. You need to find teams who are very close to customers, who are willing to fully embrace this and actually see the impact of it in their work and with their customers. But you also need the support of the senior-most executives. And to GE's credit, their senior-most executives really believe in the need for change and have been pushing this kind of change from the highest levels, from Jeff and Walton and his direct reports, all the way down. So you need both. And the other thing is that you can't, when you're trying to change at that scale, you can't be overly dogmatic about it. You can't think that there's one, very, very narrowly defined solution that's going to be the same everywhere across your organization. It has to be flexible.
Did you look for any quick win as an agile, right? Where's the low-hanging fruit? Where?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, and even something like that bracket challenge. I mean, that was something. Let's do some kind of pilot that's very clearly defined and show what it's capable of.
Do you think it's possible to change these? I mean, of course, some of them will be changed probably, but a lot of these big organizations maybe never be able to get to a transformation like this.
Yeah, so is it possible for organizations of that size to scale? The question, for me, the question is, yes, in theory, I do believe that it is possible for them to change, but can they change fast enough? That's the real issue, and that's very hard to answer because it takes so much effort and kind of belief and buy-in to change a culture at that scale. But also we don't know how much time they've got. Maybe they have 15 years and that will be enough time for them to change. Maybe they only have 3 years and they won't make it. I don't know.
Go away.
All right, well, I'm sticking around, so feel free to come up afterwards. Thank you.